And so we're going to talk about probably one of the topics that causes the most, I'm going to say, angst among mentors and mentor coordinators. And that's when issues come up with students that we have concerns, or it's a red flag for us, or the hair on the back of our neck goes up a little bit, or we just don't know quite what to do with it. So I want to just kind of talk about both expectations and then this whole issue around confidentiality. Okay? So we talked about some of this earlier today, but I'm just going to put these up here. So again, these are some basic expectations that we have of everybody. One is this consistent attendance and follow-through. We've talked about that at length today. Respect of all program participants. We treat them respectfully regardless of who they are. And then appropriate physical boundaries. And so I'm not really going to go into that today, but I'll tell you one thing that we think about is just this whole kind of hugging issue. And hugging, I think probably the best thing I would defer to is kind of the sideways hug, unless it's probably of the same gender and somebody that you really know and are very a good healthy relationship with. But the sideways hug is always a good way to go. And we've had students that we've had to address about frontal hugging, just because it starts to turn into something different, and you sort of feel it as a staff person, that we've had to kind of talk to students about these kind of things. But again, we pay attention to this stuff, and we ask you to pay attention to this stuff too. If something feels funny to you, your feelings are a very good indicator. If something is not quite right, I would pay attention to that and maybe check it out with your mentor coordinator. If you're a mentor coordinator, check it out with one of us. And then if there's something that we see that needs to be addressed, we'll address it with you or help you kind of navigate that, okay? So I think that's all I'm going to say about that at this point. But again, something to pay attention to. We really try to keep this a safe, positive place. And so we are aware of these things. And then we'll address all of those issues as need be. Communication for, I need the clicker here, this. Communication for issues that arise. It's just good to know how this works in terms of who do I talk to and how do I communicate in case there's a problem of some sort. So students go to mentors or next gen staff. So hopefully they'll go to their mentors about an issue or something that they're concerned about first. Sometimes they'll come to us. Mentors, then you go to your mentor coordinator if you have a concern about something, or you can pull one of us aside and we'll discuss it with you also. Mentor coordinators, if there's something that pops up, then you would come to us about those kind of things. And then parents, we ask that they go, if they have concerns about program or the mentoring relationship or whatever, we ask that parents go to their mentor coordinator with concerns first. And then if you as a mentor coordinator have concerns, then you can bring that to us. So we try to keep the communication as clear as we can around this. Otherwise, everybody's talking to everybody, and it gets to be a mess. Okay, so just want to encourage you to just kind of follow that protocol in terms of how you deal with situations. In a program this big, we just need to kind of walk that way. Let me see here. So that's the last piece I'm going to say about that at this point. Let me back up and say this. Parents, the question is, what relationship do parents have with their mentors, with the mentors of their kids? And we think it's great if parents want to build a relationship with mentors. And they can, if they want to invite you over for dinner, or, there's some folks that they really like to get involved in the lives of their mentors. The line that we would draw, and we talk about this with parents, is that they don't go to their mentors to advocate with the mentor to get their student to do something that they're unsuccessful getting them to do. Do you know what I mean? So they're not cleaning their room, or they're not getting their homework done, or whatever it might be. Now they're going to the mentor to try to get them to advocate on behalf of that. We would say we want to draw a line there so that it doesn't create a weird dynamic between puts the mentor in a very weird spot. So we've talked to parents about this, but it may come up. Again, if you're a mentor and you have a concern about something that a parent has asked you to do, go to your mentor coordinator, and then they'll kind of help you navigate it. If they have a question or it's unclear to them, they'll come to us. We'll help make that clear. Does that kind of make sense? So again, those are important to note. Okay. I want to talk about confidentiality for a couple of minutes here. And again, our goal with confidentiality is not to keep secrets from people, but it's to create a safe environment where students can share honestly with a safe person. So every person that is here has been background checked and are what we would consider to be safe people. And we want to create a space where students can talk about, whatever it is that is on their heart with those folks, okay? And again, we recognize that it takes some time before those relationships develop. But some kids, like Amanda said earlier, some kids may just open up and share everything from day one. And some kids, it's just kind of a slow release of information over time. But so when we talk about this, what we try to do, or the way that we've talked about this, is we talk about, we've developed kind of a 4-level approach to this to kind of give you a very concrete way to think about it, okay? So the first thing is this, is what we call level 1 when it comes to confidentiality. Again, let me back up and say this. Everything, students know that they can share everything that's said between themselves and their mentor is confidential. However, the mentor can go to their mentor coordinator about most things to keep them abreast of the relationship. And we told this to students on Wednesday. Now, whether any of them will remember, should it come up, probably most of them will not. But we do let students know this so that a student, what they might share with their mentor, the mentor coordinator might find out about some of those things too. That's sort of the initial circle of trust that we develop right there, okay? So when it comes to like the normal struggles that students have, like I'm having a relational problem, I'm not doing well at school, or those kind of things, then we would say that confidentiality is maintained. A mentor coordinator may or may not be aware of some of these things. You can check in about it or not, dependent upon the situation, and if you feel like you need to, okay? And then the other thing, the mentor coordinator might be updated or might not be based on the situation. Okay, here's the second thing, is what we would say are some engagement in risky behaviors, okay? And so, and they are of a nature that is not immediately dangerous or escalating, okay? So, it might be these items here. It might be having some suicidal thoughts or feelings. It might be, cutting. It might be someone's engagement or thinking about an eating disorder. Somebody has looked at pornography online. You become aware of that. Somebody has used drugs or alcohol. There's some sexual activity to some point, some petty crime or some bullying that has occurred. Right? These we would consider level 2, and they become a little bit more serious. So they're not ongoing or repeating or escalating in severity. It's just like somebody has looked. Pornography is kind of a good example. They've looked at it maybe once or twice, and they've made you aware of it. Okay? Or maybe they've went to a party and they drank, right? And they've mentioned that to you in the conversation. Okay? So they divulge this to you, and so maybe you have a different, you may have all different kinds of reactions. You may feel all of a sudden very nervous or uptight, or you feel like you need to tell them to stop doing that, don't ever do that again, or whatever it might be. So here's kind of here's our instructions to you. One is just to encourage you to stay calm, and just take a deep breath if you need to in the middle of that situation. And I would say this as well, is to maintain a neutral and a caring countenance. So I would really try, internally you may be feeling some anxiety and stress, but I would say externally you would just want to maintain a neutral, caring countenance in terms of your interactions with that student. Easier said than done. Doesn't mean you don't care, but just try to stay as neutral as you possibly can, okay? The next thing we would say is this, is to ask some good questions to understand what's going on. If they drank, to find out what that was about, what happened, where was it at, as much as they want to tell you about that. If they divulged to you that they were doing pornography, I'd encourage you to ask them a little bit more about that. If it's something that's just a one-time thing or something they're doing on a regular basis, or whatever it might be. But I ask some questions to understand what's going on here, okay? The next thing I would say is this. You might want to say you'll let the student know you'll need to bring in the mentor coordinator. So it might be something, again, they know that there is this, the mentor coordinator has insight or has knowledge of some of these things in the relationship. So you might just say to the student, I just need to let you know, I'm just going to check in with my mentor coordinator about this. They are a person who cares about our relationship, and I just want to make sure that someone else knows besides me, okay, when it comes to those things. Okay, now let's go to this next item here. So again, as it relates to this level 2 issue, confidentiality is not maintained, so now the mentor coordinator knows. The mentor coordinator is updated and informs the next gen team on a level 2 here. And then let's go to this. The next gen team may or may not inform parents. So what I want to say is that if the mentor coordinator's been updated, the mentor coordinator does have some discretion as to whether it's something they want to bring to the next gen team or not. So if they discern this person looked at pornography a couple of times, they're in conversation about it, as an example, they might decide we're going to let the next gen team know, or we're not going to let the next gen team know. So again, there's some discretion there as far as whether or not they engage. This is probably the grayest of the areas here. And so I would just suggest, if you have concerns, you hear about this, it's okay to let us know as a team, and we can help discern with you whether it's something that we need to take any further than this, okay? And we are not ones to just like take everything to parents or let somebody else in immediately if something arises to the surface. We would discern that with you, okay? So we may or may not inform parents, dependent on what the situation was. Now, I'm going to go to level 3 here and talk about this for a couple of minutes. So these are repeating, I would say repeating or escalating behaviors. These are things like, again, suicidal thoughts or feelings, but now they become pervasive. Cutting, as opposed to somebody maybe on a level 2, it might be somebody scratching on themselves once or twice, or just kind of, I would say, experimenting with that a little bit, and they've revealed that, but it's not an ongoing thing, it's something that happened once, but now it's becoming a way to cope and to deal with life situations, right? Eating disorders, same thing, maybe somebody experimented once versus now they are kind of heading down a certain road with this. So it's repeating and it's escalating in terms of the type of behavior, okay? So again, there's a whole list here, but all these would sort of fall into that category of, or the potential to fall into that category of repeating and escalating behaviors, okay? So here's what we would do with these. They're escalating, like I said, and then confidentiality would not be maintained, and we would ask that you would inform us, immediately if that is the case. So a student has maybe experimented with alcohol or smoked pot or something like that, and all of a sudden, in a conversation with you, it's revealed to you that now it's becoming something that they are using every day, maybe multiple times a day to cope. And again, it's a little bit of a fine line to determine when it takes that turn, right? But it definitely does make a turn. And so we would ask you to let us know immediately. And then we would inform the mentor coordinator, and we would form a plan with a mentor to get that student some help, to have some kind of an intervention. And we would typically work with the mentor to say something to the effect of, we have concern for you, and we feel like this is something that we need to bring somebody else in on. Something that somebody said to me a long time ago that I found very helpful is that this feels like something that I can't bear alone as a mentor. I can't bear this alone. I need to bring somebody else in. And so we would work with that student then to come up with a plan to communicate with typically a parent. There may be a situation in which we went to a school counselor or somebody else that was a little bit different, but to bring another person into it. And we would work with the mentor to work with the student to help them have that conversation. So if they went to the parent, we might work with a mentor to go to the parent and coach that mentor and the student to have the conversation with the parent about that. And it could be something that a Next Gen staff went as well, if need be, or it could be something just the mentor went, or potentially even the mentor coordinator. But again, we work with the student to come up with a plan that they have investment in, so that they can share with their parent or the appropriate person, as the case may be, what's going on. Right? Yep.
So just for clarification, at this level, as mentors, you want us coming directly to the Next Gen team rather than going to our mentor coordinators first?
Yeah, I think it's fine either way. We would want to know pretty quick if there's something like this that needs attention. So if you had a concern about something like this, Julianne, you probably want to let your mentor coordinator know right away, and even ask them to go to us right away. Or you can come to us on a Next Gen night, and just let us know right away, and then we would circle back to the mentor coordinator and make sure everybody's on the same page about what's going on. Does that kind of make sense? Good. So then, once we came up with a plan, and again, it's so important for us to have the student feel like they are invested in the plan. So we'll even say things like, if it's not immediately dangerous, we might say something like, I can do this with you, or your mentor can do this with you, and it needs to happen between now and Monday. And by Monday, we need to have a phone call from a parent that can verify that you've had this conversation. And then we'll feel like we'll figure out kind of where we go from there. Okay. Now, what's true is, and you saw this in the when Julie was talking in the video earlier today, it does put stress on the mentor-student relationship. A student may or may not feel like they have been betrayed to some degree, but that doesn't mean that it's not the right thing to do. And we try, again, as a Next Gen team, try to work with you in such a way that it minimizes the impact that that's going to have. And I think in Julie's situation, I think we handled both those situations in such a way that those relationships, though there was a bump in the road, I think they're in a good place today. And students will look back ultimately and be glad that someone kind of helped them walk through that. They won't appreciate it at the time, but it doesn't mean that it's not the right thing to do. And some students, to be honest with you, are relieved that someone is going to push them over the edge to help them talk to somebody about it, because they haven't done it yet, and they need to do it. So again, what I would say about all of this is that it's definitely a gray area. I mean, some things are very clear to us, but there's a lot of things that are very unclear. If we broke confidentiality with every student who drank, and as a parent, I would have concerns if my kids were drinking. But if we broke confidentiality with every student that we found out that drank, we wouldn't have kids sharing, honestly, with their mentors. So it creates this, but if it took a turn where it started to become an obsessive deal or something that was happening regularly, we would want to intervene and get that student help. So again, part of this is just a trust thing, and we've been through this a number of different times, and we hope that folks have learned that they can kind of trust our ability to walk through these things with our students. Okay, does that kind of make sense? Let me go to the next slide here. And I just mentioned this, the parents are informed with the students' input. The last thing I'll talk about here is level 4, or life-threatening mandatory reporting issues. So we as a Next Gen team, we're mandatory reporters. Students or mentors, you are not, but we ask again that you inform us about any of these kind of things. But these are the kind of issues that we would consider level 4 if these are imminent situations where someone is going to hurt themselves, hurt somebody else, or somebody is hurting them, and it's like it's going to happen now. Okay, so this would be like if there's a suicide, they have the plan, the means, and the weapon, or whatever it might be to kind of commit that. Or they are down the road on the planning as far as this is concerned. If there's physical or sexual abuse that we discover is going on, we would intervene right now on that. If there's threat of harm to self, which is kind of along the same lines as suicide, or intent to harm others. Again, in today's day and age, if we found out that some student had a plan to do something at school or something like that, we would intervene right now around that kind of thing. So again, this is level 4 types of things. So, in these situations, confidentiality is not maintained. The mentor must inform the next-gen staff immediately. Let's see, the student's safety is ensured. In other words, we would not let that student go home or just leave here unless we knew that the parents knew sort of what was going on. We would need to make sure that that student's safe. And again, we would make sure that we work with the student to kind of help them communicate that to the proper person, but we would not let them leave without making sure that they were safe and had a safe place to go when they left this place, okay, as it relates to those things. Let me see. So parents informed immediately, again, with students' input. And then lastly, because they're a little out of the loop on this one, we would update the mentor coordinator as it relates to this. So let me just go back and kind of summarize this. Level 1, just kind of the daily, everyday things. Confidentiality is maintained. You sort of, as an MC, become aware of some of these things just because of your relationships with your mentor. Students know this, okay? Level 2 is probably the trickiest. It's the gray area where there's some kind of behavior, and it's typically, if it's kind of a one-time thing or something, we would pay attention to it. The MC is informed, but we wouldn't necessarily reach out to parents. We might, but most likely not. Level 3 is when it becomes repeating or escalating, and then we would work with the student to come up with a plan to engage with their parent or a proper person to address that issue. And then level 4 is, again, right here, right now, we have to address it and deal with it. And then the last thing I would say is this. By far the best thing that you can do is when you are in doubt, just check it out with one of us, okay? Even though these things seem kind of scary when we start to talk about them, a lot of times it's an opportunity to walk with a student through a difficult thing. And it is a great, I tell you, there's some great learning opportunities that occur here. The silence can be broken around an issue that has been kept secret, that needs to be addressed. A student has a chance to kind of engage with an issue that they haven't taken a look at or don't even fully understand what it means or might mean to them in the future. And so it is a great opportunity for some really great learning to take place and some help to be given to a student when it comes to these kind of things. So again, complicated things, but our commitment, like I said earlier, is to walk with you through all this.